Welcome to the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund Information Webinar number 1. You can go to the next slide. It is. Okay, so as we've said, if you can please introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know who all is here. Everything that you're going to see, the event is being recorded. You will get a copy of the slide deck. You will also get a link to the program guidelines, which is very extensive and goes through every question in the webinar. We are not going to go through every page of that here today because one of my biggest goals is to make sure we have time left at the end for your specific questions. Next slide. Oh. So here we go. You're being hosted today by Californians for the Arts. We are two sister organizations, Californians Arts Advocates and Californians for the Arts. California Arts Advocates is the lobbying arm, and Californians for the Arts is the arts service organization. There's our mighty team there on the steps from last year's summit. Next. Questions are always welcome. Please use the QA function. A big part of the reason that we ask you to use the QA as opposed to the chat is because it's easier for us to not have things lost in the chat. Also, that keeps it all in one place. So at the end, we can see if there were any questions that didn't get answered, and we can then utilize the questions and answers to begin to formulate an FAQ. And so you will get a copy of that Q&A also in your follow-up email. Please do be respectful of everyone else who's here. And there's some other housekeeping tips there. If you can follow those, that's great. Next. There are a couple of tips here for navigating your Zoom. You can turn on the closed captioning for those of you that would like that. Down at the bottom, and this is just some information on how to do that. And I'm sorry, I just got a message in the chat. So next, these are some more tips on how you can save the chat. So I'm going to let you read those as opposed to reading them to you. All right, next. As we are launching onto this program, we are working with a group of community partners because one of our big goals with this is to make sure every organization in the state that is potentially eligible for this program knows about it. So these are our great community partners that we will be hosting webinars, and they're also reaching out all around the state. We've tried to have a variety of different kinds of organizations speaking to different genres of performing arts. Next. So as you know, we have a whole series of webinars planned, excuse me, with the different partners. Everyone is welcome to any of the webinars. We're hosting them with different partners to bring in diverse audiences, but the content of the webinars will all be the same. So you can come to any of the webinars, and all of the webinars also will be recorded, so they're there for your on-demand viewing. Okay, next. So now what I'd like to do is introduce our partners for today, which are our friends from Theater Producers of Southern California. And in particular, here representing them is Daniel Schoeneman, Vice President. And like the fabulous theater dude that he is, we had a little staffing issue this morning. And so Daniel is standing in also as our slideshow technician. So Daniel, if you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about TIPSCA.
Okay, give me 1 second because I have to pull up a document that I now have.
I understand.
The slideshow. So, well, I can really me see if I can multitask this. My name is Daniel Schoenman. I'm the artistic director for the Inkwell Theater in Los Angeles, and I'm also the board vice president for TIPSCA. So many emails about this. Sorry.
Do you want me to read it?
I just can't find the, Martha, I'm just trying to find the email from you with,
Martha,
okay,
do you want to jump in?
I found it, I've got it. Okay, so from the Producers League of Southern California, I think most of the people here either are our members or know us, but in case you don't, we are the trade association that represents small theater and performing arts within our Southern California area, primarily nonprofit organizations, but we do have memberships that include everyone. So if you don't know about us for any reason, please come and check us out and take a look. We are always looking for more community partners. We just to give a little bit of information. So we were the first sponsor for the Equitable Payroll Fund legislation about 5 years ago, I think now. We worked with a number of political consultants and a number of other partners throughout the process. A couple of legislative champions, including Senator Portantino, who we work closely with, Actors Equities, Californians for the Arts, of course, Arts for LA, CVL Economics, and just all of the many small arts organizations and advocates to get this program passed. We're very, very excited to be co-hosting this first webinar, launching the outreach phase. And we want to really just give a special thanks to Californians for the Arts for stepping up to manage the program and continuing to work so heavily on what, we really helped to launch.
All right, everyone, we're going to take just a second because there seems to be something wrong with the chat function. And no one is able to share with everyone. So give me 1 second. I am sorry for our technical difficulties, but we're going to fix this.
Oh, that fixed it.
Okay, did we get it?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, and on we will go. Okay, next.
Hold on, I gotta get out of my, I'm gonna figure out how to get out of my.
Okay, so as I said, we're going to take an official moment to celebrate that we are here and to remember that advocacy does work. And all of the time that you all spent is the only reason that we are here. So before we dive into the next steps, I just wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to hope all of you take a moment to celebrate and remember that advocacy works, because our next step is going to be advocating for the impact of this program so that there's more money. So next, here we are. What is the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund? I've yet to come up with a quick, easy way to say PAEPF, but there you go. So Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund was created to support small nonprofit performing arts organizations with revenues under $2 million in hiring and retaining employees. The fund reimburses a portion of payroll costs on a quarterly basis. The program's goal is to restore resilience, build sustainability in the sector through an investment in creative jobs. It's administered by the California Office of the Small Business Advocate and managed by California for the Arts. We anticipate at this point that the portal will open in early March, and applications will be reviewed on a first-come, first-served basis. That is officially the last slide I'm going to read to you. Okay, next. So the important things to keep in mind, both 501c3s and fiscally sponsored Model C organizations can apply. When we get to the application, there are two separate applications, one for 501c3s and one for fiscally sponsored applications. Next, the grant is based on some very specific eligibility criteria. There is not a lot of narrative. There are not a lot of value choices. There are not any value choices that are being made in this grant program. Here are your basic eligibility criteria. As I said, 501c3 or a Model C fiscal sponsor. You have to be producing performing arts that are open to the public. You have to be hiring and paying workers as employees, independent contractors, even if it is someone that you are legally paying as an independent contract, they still are not eligible for this particular program. You have to be in compliance with California sexual harassment training requirements. You have to have a written DEI policy in place approved by your board and a written anti-harassment policy in place approved by your board. You have to have a mission statement. You have to be certified in good standing with California Secretary of State. You have to be able to provide 990s for the last 3 years, or for those of you who have filed the 990N, which doesn't provide financial information, there's the alternative form that you file with the state that shows your financials. You have to have adjusted average annual revenue under $2 million, and we'll go over the calculations that go into that, and not fall into one of the categories that are specifically ineligible. Next. So these organizations, these types of organizations, are those that are not eligible for the program based on the legislation. The key is, what is the primary focus of your organization? One of the big questions that come up, because youth organizations are represented here on the ineligible. So if you are a theater company, for example, and that is your primary focus, but you happen to have youth programming that you do as well, then under this category, you would fall into the eligible as opposed to the ineligible. You're allowed to have youth programming. It just can't be your primary mission. So, you know, if Inkwell has a youth program, but their primary productions are their professional productions that are open to the public, they're okay. However, Santa Monica Children's Theater, which would be their primary focus as being a youth program, they would not be eligible. Okay, next. The reimbursable payments. The program is set up, number one, that it is all reimbursements. So you will not get a grant upfront for money that you then spend on payroll. You are reimbursed for the payrolls you have already spent, and we'll talk about those. But first, the adjusted gross revenue, because the percentage of your payroll that you are reimbursed is based on your adjusted gross revenue. And we're going to take your last 3 years of gross revenue, average those. Well, the last 3 filed tax years. So not 2024, because none of us have filed that one yet, but your last 3 filed 990s. And there are a couple of kinds of income that the program allows you to deduct because they increase what your revenue looks like without actually raising your operational budget. So donor earmarked capital funds, pass-through money, where you are collecting and putting out money for another organization, but it's not actually impacting your operational revenues. And finally, the one that's worded a little strangely, funds received pursuant to section 8753.6. In plain language, this is special funds through the CAC, not your general operating, your youth, none of the regular public programs that the CAC administers. Those aren't money you can exclude. But the Arts License Plate Fund, or if you get funds from the Keep Arts in the Schools program, those can be separated out. So then once we determine through the application what your average adjusted gross revenue is, then you go to this tier and that tells you what your percentage of reimbursement. The program is designed to be the most support for the smallest organizations, and then it, gradually decreases. So for the smallest organizations, those under $250,000, they are eligible for an 80% reimbursement. Up to the top, 175,000 to 2 million, it goes down to a 20% reimbursement. Next, what is reimbursable? Payroll expenses, so your employee wages, workers' comp expenses, retirement, health, your expense to have your payroll processed, your paymaster fees, your payroll fees. The big thing that is not reimbursable is taxes. So unemployment insurance that you pay to the government, and also employee taxes. Both the employer portion and the portion that is withheld from your employees is not reimbursable. And the reimbursements are capped per quarter, per employee at $10,000. So then after that cap is when the percentage is reimbursed. So really nobody would actually receive $10,000 since the highest percentage is an 80% reimbursement. And there will be forms in the application to help calculate all of this. Taking a deep breath and moving on to the next slide. Okay, the timeline for this process. The application portal is going to open in early March. We are hoping by next week to have an actual day, although I shouldn't say that out loud because it will jinx it. So the applications are going to be submitted. Then they're going to be reviewed in the order that they're received. So this is a grant that is awarded based on a first come, first served basis. Then the with your application, you're going to submit your paperwork for 2 of the quarters that will be covered by the grant. The grant covers 4 quarters, and we're going to, and those begin, there are 2 retroactive quarters and 2 upcoming quarters. So Q3 and Q4 of 2024 are the first 2 quarters that are eligible for reimbursement, and then Q1 and Q2 of 2025. All of these quarters are calendar quarters, regardless of the fiscal year you might be on. So once you're approved, then Cal OSBA will begin processing the reimbursements for those first 2 quarters. Because Cal OSBA is a state agency, and we all know the bigger you are, the slower things can move through. That process of processing those reimbursements after approval will be 45 to 90 days. I'm going to go through this in more detail. I just wanted to give you the big picture. Then, following the end of Q1 of 2025, you'll submit the paperwork that goes with your payroll expenses for the first quarter. Again, those will be approved, and then Cal OSBA will issue checks. The next set of reimbursements will be due by July 30th after that final quarter, and then those processes will again take 45 to 90 days for all the checks. And finally, there will be a final report due in the beginning of September. Next. So this breaks down the process a little bit more so that you understand the relationship between Californians for the Arts and Cal OSBA. Cal OSBA is the administrator for the program. They are the fiscal agent for the program. These are all state funds. This is in no way, shape, or form Californians for the Arts as a funder. We are just managing the program. So in terms of logistics, the portal and the application is managed by CFTA, and we will review the documents, make sure everything is in place, make sure all of the eligibility criteria are matched, and then the application will go to Cal OSBA for their final check, and they are the ones that will actually be approving the grants. Once that approval happens, then you will get notified and sign a grant agreement. As is noted here, because there is a set amount of funds, but some of these funds, the way the grant is going to work, as I said, you're going to submit payroll expenses for Q3 and Q4 that are actual expenses. And you're also going to submit what you project your Q1 and Q2 expenses to be. So there's, and that will set the maximum amount for your grant. That way, as we're going through accepting applications, we can keep an eye on how many applications we think we will be able to fund. We will accept and approve more applications than we believe that we can fund, and we will let you know when you're in the waiting list group as opposed to the actual group. But by doing that, that will allow us, if some people's projections come in under, we actually end up having extra money, then we will have some waitlisted organizations that are already approved that can start moving through the funded process. So you're going to get an announcement, you're going to be given a grant award letter, and then once you have signed and returned the grant agreement and certifications, then Cal OSBA will begin processing those first 2 quarters of reimbursements. And then we've really talked through the rest of the things on the slide. So let's move on to the next. Okay, so the application portal itself is called GoSmart. You can go to the next. One of the first steps, and this is actually a step you can do right now, is to go into the GoSmart portal. We will send you all a link to that in our follow-up email and set up your account. Not unlike with CAC and other funders, many county funders, you go into a portal, you set up an account, and then you might be multiple grants that you could apply for. That beginning portion you can do right now. GoSmart, and it's linked here, has a great tech tip page with videos and tutorials for how to navigate in the portal. I recommend that you do that portion now. Okay, next. All right, when you are creating the account, the first thing to keep in mind is you must create an account as an organization, because this particular grant individuals will not be eligible for. So if you set up your account as an individual, you won't be able to apply for the program. There is some basic information about your organization that is listed here that you will need when you are setting up your account. That information will then roll over into your application, so you won't have to repeat it. But the information that is listed here, you will need. For fiscally sponsored applications, the fiscal sponsor is going to set up this account. The fiscal sponsor is the official grantee. In the application, you'll be asked information about both the sponsor organization and the sponsee, but the account itself is set up for the fiscal sponsor. Next, the application. There are 2 distinct applications. So once you set up your account, and if you go in and set up your account right now, you're not going to see these applications yet because they aren't live. Set up your account, and then once the applications go live, you'll come back and you'll have the option to pick either the 501c3 application or the fiscally sponsored application. Next, and in the application guidelines, it goes step by step, and there's one set of directions step by step through the 501c3 application, and then there's a second step by step for the fiscally sponsored. Again, there's just some notes here on the basic organization information because once you get into the actual application, there's some more organizational details that we need besides what's just in the initial account setup. Next. The eligibility for this grant, as I talked about before, is not about you writing a bunch of narratives. You're not going to be asked about your actual artistic process or any of that. This is about basic information about your organization and some documents that you're going to submit. This is the list of organizational documents that you will be expected to submit. One of the things you can be doing right now, take this list and start gathering them. Make PDFs of them, get them organized so that on the day when you go to apply, they're all there and ready to upload. The program guidelines has more information on all of these in case any of these cause you confusion. There's a definition section. Okay, next. So the second set of documents that you're going to submit are documents to help establish that you are providing programming that is open to the public and is advertised to the public. For this, and it's a series of threes here, so hang in with me. You're going to select 3 productions from the last 5 years, each from a unique year. So you can't pick 3 from 2023. You're going to pick 1 production per year. And for each of those productions, you're going to provide 3 different pieces of evidence to help establish that you do these live performances. There's a list of 6 types of documents here, and you're going to select 1 of each of these. Or no, you're going to select 3 of these. So for your first production, let's say, as is illustrated here, you did Angels of America in 2021. And the 3 pieces of information I want to provide are I'm going to show you, I'm going to give a box office report, evidence of a paid advertisement, and a review for the production. And then I'm going to move to 2023 and I'm going to pick my production of The Shot. And I'm going to give evidence of paid advertisement, a review, and a playbill. For 2024, I'm going to select Helvetica and pick 3 different things. The thing you can't do is pick 3 shows from the same year, and you can't, for a particular show, give 3 copies of the same thing. You can't just give 3 reviews. There is a variety of different kinds that you can choose from because we understand not every show has everything associated with it. We all know the challenges of getting things reviewed and those kinds of things. All of this documentation should be saved as PDFs and will be uploaded with the application. All right, next. Okay, now we get into the numbers part. For those of you that hate spreadsheets, this is the part that's going to give you the willies, but hang in with me, it's not going to be that bad. For calculating the income, as we talked about, you're going to give gross income, and then if you have any of those special kinds of income, you're going to fill those in also. There's going to be a spreadsheet, download it, there'll be pictures of all of this in the guide, and you're going to fill in these basic pieces of information, and then it's going to do the calculations for you. If you are entering any of the special exception categories of funds, you will also have to upload documentation to prove that you actually, have those funds. So if you are entering money for donor restricted funds for capital expenditure, you're going to need that donor letter, grant agreement, whatever established that exception. And that will then calculate out, you'll do this for 3 years, and the form will then calculate what your adjusted gross annual revenue is for the purpose of the tier. Next. So now the payroll. We're gonna collect payroll expenses for 4 different quarters, as we talked about before. 2 of those are retroactive, so you'll be dealing with actual expenses, and 2 of those are proactive or forthcoming for Q1 and Q2 of 2025. And this gives you the breakdown of the questions you will be asked. One of the questions is hourly wage. The reason that is because one of the requirements is that you are paying your employees at minimum the prevailing hourly wage for your city. So if your city has a specific one, then that's what you should be paying. If not, then, what is the county's? And ultimately, the final line is the state. So if you have a city or county that requires higher minimum wage than the state in general, then you have to abide by that hourly wage. Then it's going to ask you for the gross wages, the different categories that we've talked about, and then again, the form will calculate the amount for you and show you the projected amount that you would be eligible for if you are approved for the program. For all of this information, you're going to then be asked to upload documentation to prove it. Okay, let's go next. So, for the first 2 quarters, you got the actual numbers. For the second 2 quarters, you will be projecting your expenses. So you're going to look at those quarters, and I understand in some cases you may have shows, so you might know the roles that you have to fill, both performance roles and all the other roles that you would hire people for. And you may know the role name and not the person's name, and that's fine. These amounts that you're going to enter will form the basis, if you're approved, for the maximum amount for your grant. However, the amount of money you actually receive in reimbursement for Q1 and Q2 will be based on your actual expenses. If your actual expenses are more than you projected, then you are still capped at what you project. If they are less than you projected, then you will receive the actual, based on your actual amount, and any leftover funds will stay in the pool and potentially, we'll move someone else in to a funding position. Please don't, though, go wild and overproject, because that's only going to lock up a lot of money that you're not in the end going to get anyway. So I realize the temptation of looking at this saying, oh, well, let me just go really high because I don't get the money anyway. But what that will do is potentially cause send up red flags that will delay your application and lock up funds that could be going to other organizations that in the end you're not going to receive anyway, because your actual reimbursement payments will be based on actual expenses. All of the quarters that we're talking about are calendar years. Even if you're on a fiscal year, we're talking about calendar years for these purposes. Okay, next. So we've covered, there we go. So the documentation. Because everyone's process is a little bit different, and we understand payroll services, you get slightly different documentation than Paymaster. But excuse me, what we will be looking for is third-party verifiable evidence that you in fact paid the monies to the people you say you have paid the monies. So quarterly tax statements, quarterly payroll registers, will give you complete lists of what is and is not acceptable. Particularly, one of the areas that is a little challenging, I know, is going to be verifying workers' comp, because many of us pay workers' comp on percentages and calculations that we give an insurance broker So in some of those cases, you may have to do the calculation that says, this is the total amount that I paid, this is the percent per person, and include things that way. If you are not sure, this is an area that we can certainly help you with. And when you are providing your documentation, if you think something needs some explanation, you feel like you don't fit exactly into the mold, and your situation is a little unique, when creating your PDFs, you can always add a note. Create a little letter that explains your situation and why, yours may not be completely obvious. Always err on the side of sharing more information for these various parts. So for Q3 and Q4, when you are doing your application, you're going to go ahead and include all of this information. So that way, once you're approved, the state can move immediately to starting the reimbursement process. For Q1 and Q2, you will not submit your documentation until we get to the end of those quarters. So that's when you'll have the actual. Right now, you're just going to provide numbers. Okay, next. So that is the meat and potatoes. The stuff we've gone over is what your eligibility will be based on. Then there are some questions, some data that needs to be collected that was included in the legislation, that you have to answer these questions, but the answers themselves don't impact your eligibility. They're going to ask you demographic questions. There's going to be some questions about overall funding. Each of these questions is listed in the guide, but do not let, it's going to ask you the number of employees you have. These are so the state can share how this money is going, and so they can demonstrate the impact of the dollars to help us get more dollars in the future. But just because it asks for your number of employees, you're not going to be punished or rewarded for having fewer employees or more employees. We just want to be able to clearly establish who got the money, what great impact it had, and from what parts of the state, and who was served. Next. One of the last things you're going to do is fill out a certificate of compliance, which is going to say all of the stuff that I just told you is true. All of the documents that I have provided to you, they're real documents. I'm in compliance in various different things. One of the things that falls in here, and I know this question of the sexual harassment certification compliance is a little confusing because there is no organizational certificate gold stamp you get for being in compliance for sexual harassment. And there are some organizations that are not required. But one of the things that you will certify to in this is that you are in compliance. If you're ever audited, they will come back, and that's the point at which the state might say to you, I need to see your certificates from your employees for this year. You do not have to submit all of that at this point. You just will need to be able to say that your organization is in compliance with sexual harassment training. There are references and resources in the program guide to help you clarify what that means for your particular organization, because it is different for different sizes of organizations. And so we're not going to go into all of that here, but there are resources and references, and helping you figure that out is something that our support staff and also the community partners can help you with. Okay, so this is going to be available ahead. You can download it, you're going to fill it out and sign it, and then upload it as part of the process. There will be a link to it in the program guidelines. Okay, next. Cute picture, next. Okay, that would then be the end of your application. You will be submitted. You will get an email that tells you, yay, you did it. The application won't let you submit if you haven't uploaded all the required documents. And if you have missed something, it will say to you at the end, hey, where's your X, Y, or Z? You do not have to do the entire thing in one sitting. If you sit down and start the application and then realize, you forgot something, go out, you can get it, you can come back and continue. There's a navigation bar on the side. You don't have to start at the beginning and go all the way through to the end. You can jump around with the navigation. There are pictures of all of these things in the program guidelines. These grants will be reviewed and awarded in the order they are received. So there is definitely motivation to get your stuff together beforehand and be ready to apply as soon as the portal opens, and to make sure your documentation is clean and viewable when we are reviewing it. Because if there's a question or a problem, then that's going to delay you in the staying in line portion. Because all the grants will start with the first ones and will go in order, but if somebody, the basis will also be upon when it's finally approved. So if your grant gets delayed because there was a blank page there instead of your 501c3 letter, and we have to contact you and get a new one and all of that, that's going to delay the processing. Okay, next. Resources. Next. The program guidelines are there as a resource. These are some basic tips. My suggestion would be start out with, you've done the first one, you've come to a webinar to get a foundational understanding. Now you're going to download those program guidelines that has all the application questions and go through it in detail. Figure out what other questions you might have, what things that for your organization seem confusing, and then you can email us at the email address listed there. You can also make an appointment during office hours to talk directly with someone. I will say to you, when getting information and questions answered, my strongest recommendation, and I found this to be very true in assisting people through the relief grants, is to email your questions and get an emailed response. Because with an emailed response, as opposed to talking it through on the phone, you have something to refer back to. It's much more difficult for there to be confusion. I mean, it's much harder for it to get confused when you're reading it as opposed to trying to remember what you were told. Then it might be a good idea, after you've reviewed it all, to watch another webinar. Either come to another one or watch one of the recorded ones to get some more clarity. Start gathering your documents, organizing them in your computer so that on the day of, you can just upload them. Make sure your authorized signatory is actually on your statement of information. That's the kind of thing that the state will have to check to make sure that the person who is authorized to be signed is listed on your application. As we talked about before, you're going to want to go in and set up your information in the GoSmart portal. A really important thing, because you're going to identify both an authorized signer and a primary contact. The primary contact needs to be someone that is actively monitoring the email and will be responsive. So if in your particular case, in your organization, the authorized signer maybe is your board president, that person might not be as dedicated to checking their email every day. So you want to make sure that in your case, you don't use the same person for your authorized signer and your primary contact. Primary contact is who we're going to email if we have a question, if there's a problem, to tell you that the grant has been awarded. I will tell you with the previous grants that there were a large number of organizations that ran into trouble because their board president or a board member was listed as the authorized signer, and that's where all the information was going, and it got lost in mailboxes, etc. So make sure your primary contact is exactly that, and someone we can reach easily. We're gonna go on to a lot more things, but this is an important one to me, to tell everyone that might be eligible to apply. A, we want to help everybody, and B, the more people that apply, the more the state realizes the urgent need for these funds and the better shot we have at getting additional funds. We want this program to be oversubscribed. Next, can you remember everybody to be putting your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat? We're going to lose them in the chat. So, as we said, go in, set up your GoSmart portal. Here's the link to the tech tips. Follow them. Next, one of the things that you need to do is provide a certificate of your good standing with California Secretary of State. There's reference in the guide to show you how to do that. Next, you can also at this check your statement of information, which can show you who your authorized signers are, because don't try to figure it out just by logic. Again, make sure you use a valid and actively monitored email address. Next, ask for help. The main email is there. We have several people who will be helping us with customer support, and we are incredibly fortunate that 2 of those people helping us with customer support will be Martha Dimson and Beatrice Casagran. We could not have better experts working on them, because if you don't know, this never would have happened. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. Without these 2 incredible women. And they understand this program deeply, and are here to help and help you understand. So avail yourself of these resources. Next. All right. So now we're going to pause on that, and we're going to go to the Q&A. So if we can open up the Q&A, and I'm going to go even to the answered questions, and we're going to go through these. Beatrice, have you been sort of watching these?
I've been answering them.
Okay. Do you want to lift up? We've got 40 minutes.
Great.
Do you want to lift up some really common ones?
Yes, I think the most common questions seem to be around sexual harassment certification. I don't know what that means, but here's the deal. The certification does not refer to the certificates that each of your employees have to turn into you, right? All that is going to be required is there will be a certification document that is part of the application. You're going to download that, and your signatory is going to have to certify that you're complying with California law on sexual harassment training, and that and say when that when you're and that you have a sexual harassment policy, and when that was adopted by your board, and any updates, the dates of any updates. You're not going to have to upload the policy itself, the document, or any DI document, for example. It's just a certification. So yes, so that seems to be causing a lot. We cannot give you legal advice as to what actually compliance with California law is. Go to the website. I believe that links have been put in the chat, and you can do that research on your own. The other questions that have been coming up are about DEI templates or sexual harassment policy templates. Those are available online. Again, we cannot provide those for you, but there are lots of organizations such as TIPSCA and others that have those things those resources available for you.
Yeah, you can reach out to any of those community partners.
Yes. 990s, the 990s, I think that I may have misunderstood one question by someone. We are looking for organizations that have been producing for the last 3 years. And it has to have been open to the public. All right. So if you don't have 990s for the last 3 years, you then can pull 990s from the last 5, but we are looking for 3 years of production history. If I'm misstating anything, please stop me from from sticking my foot in my mouth, anybody. Let's see. Those are the big questions. I'm trying to, if you are not, I just want to reiterate, this is only providing reimbursement for payroll costs connected with employees, people who are hired and paid under California law as employees. If you pay stipends, if you hire independent contractors, that does not necessarily make you ineligible. You can only get reimbursed for the monies that you pay in connection with hiring and paying employees. So stipends are not reimbursable. Anything you pay to anyone who is not an employee is not reimbursable. Martha, can you help me? What else has come up and what am I missing?
While you're looking, I'll just say a couple that I have seen here. When we talk about the last 3 years, it is your last 3 filed years. I know
Yes.
calendar years get weird with fiscal years. So the last 3 years that you were required to file are what we're talking about here.
Yes.
One other question that I saw was part-time. Yes, part-time employees, seasonal employees, they have to be employees. They do not have to be any special category of employee.
Yeah, people did ask about managers and things like that. As long as they're employees, yes, they are included.
Somebody also asked for the fiscally sponsored organization, we don't file a 990, what should we do? For the fiscally sponsored organization, your fiscal sponsor is the one that they will file the 990s. There are different requirements for you, and those specific documents that you'll be asked to supply are listed in the guidelines document.
Somebody asked if they can, if they're eligible, if they charge for tickets. Yes, please. No, we all now have to do everything for free. No, that is not the case. Yes, it's okay that you charge for tickets to your shows.
Let's see.
Just make sure you're including your ticketing fees in your published ticket prices, everybody. They're coming around after that law.
Can you please clarify what it means to be a nonprofit that raises money for a single arts organization? And Beatrice very correctly, like a booster organization. So if the only thing you are doing is raising money for a particular organization, you're not actually, it doesn't mean that you're, as an organization, yes, all of you are raising money for yourself, but that's not the primary purpose of your organization.
The other thing, I think people are concerned if you are just now adopting your DEI or your sexual harassment policy, congratulations, you're still in time. Please do it so that the person who signs can certify that you have it in place and the date that it was adopted.
Yes, and please remember, everybody, don't put your questions in the chat, put them over in the Q&A so we have a good record, because your questions will help others. That being said, I'm going to reward bad behavior. 990s for performers do not count because those are not employees. You have to be, in order to get these reimbursements, you have to be paying your employees, you have to be paying your performers as employees.
Okay, there is an ongoing question about an organization that has a theater embedded in it, and whether that would, the primary work of your organization must be the production of performing arts for the public. So if you are an other art organization that happens to have a small portion of your organization that also does theater, I believe that you are not eligible. Am I misstating that?
You are correct. No, you are 100% correct. So if one particular place, I got the question from a civic center that as part of their existence, they have a performing arts program, but their main focus is to be, a center for the community. So they're not eligible because unless that sub program files its own 990, then they're not eligible. Something else just flitted across my brain.
Yeah, that they're asking about authorized signatory. Must they be a board president, or can it be an executive director? It could be the executive director, whoever you have designated as your authorized signatory with the Secretary of State would be the person.
So with the Secretary of State, you fill out your statement of information. And on that statement of information, there is a list of people who are the authorized signers of your organization. And it has to be one of those people. Sometimes there is confusion because there is also somebody listed on the statement of information that can accept service. That's not who this is. You have to be one of those officers listed as an authorized signer. Basically, it's somebody authorized to make legal commitments for the organization. So it's not a particular position, because in different organizations, it's different positions.
If this one, if a fiscally sponsored organization also is exempt, though through California, but not using their own EIN and utilizing the fiscal sponsor, who will be the authorized signer? It would be the fiscal sponsor, right? I'm not clear on what that means.
Anytime you're using the fiscal sponsor is the authorized signer. Because in the eyes of the state, the fiscal sponsor is the actual grantee. As part of their fiscal sponsorship, they pass those funds on to you. And the financial determinations, like the fiscal sponsor could be over $2 million. But the actual signer, the ones who are legally responsible for this grant, is the fiscal sponsor. The grant is submitted by the fiscal sponsor, not the fiscally sponsored organization. Okay.
People are worried. If you used to not pay people as employees, but you started paying, somebody said if your productions go back further, yeah, you're still, that does not mean you're not eligible if you meet all the eligibility requirements, right? The grant program is meant to reimburse for employees, but if you at some point didn't have employees, that is okay as long as you do now, and you're only going to get reimbursed for employees.
There's a question about workers' comp and what can be the workers' comp expenses. It is your workers' comp insurance expenses.
Yes.
It's not what you might pay out on a workers' comp claim. It is what you pay every year, those astronomical amounts that we all pay every year for workers' comp that we're talking about here.
The other common question is, how long will funding be available? The funding for this grant will continue as long as it lasts, and then we're all fighting for more in future years, but that is not guaranteed.
Yeah. This is a budget line for the state. And there was one allotment that was done. Thank you, Senator Portantino, our champion and bulldog, who wouldn't let this die. So we currently have $12.5 million. And that is what these grant allotments will be based on. And the battle will begin immediately to replenish that fund and get another budget alignment. And with the difficult budget years ahead, it is an advocacy job that all of us will need to participate in. I would advise everyone that gets these funds to thank your representatives. Let them know the impact it has. This is why there are all of the other questions. How many jobs did you have before? How many are you looking to retain for the future? This is the information that we will use to help make the case. But the more you can do to help us spread the word and let your representatives know directly from you, their constituents, the impact is what we want to do. I want to remind everybody to please put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat, and also remind our CFTA team, please answer the questions in the Q&A and not in the chat, because the chat ones, we're going to lose that. the Q&A is all there, and that will help others and save for others. So if we can please keep moving those over. I'm going to jump down to the bottom to see if there's any new. Beatrice, let me know if you feel like we're missing anything.
I think some questions that are very specific to individuals, I'm getting kind of qualitative questions about mission statements and the primary purposes and stuff. I don't think that we're going to be able to answer that clearly. You're going to need to submit and your application will be reviewed. I just don't think that we're able to do that in this webinar.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a question of that fashion about a very specific situation, that's a perfect question to email to us. And one of the CFTA Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund team can get back to you. There's some questions here. I want to make sure everybody understands. Martha made a comment about fees. And that was not that had anything to do with this grant or this. She was referring to a recent law that has passed, and I'm sorry if that caused confusion. But Martha's comment about fees doesn't have anything to do with this. Your fees are, that comment had nothing to do. When you are not going to report your direct ticket income, the only way you're reporting income is gross revenue. So just ignore, and there are other avenues that can help you with information about the new ticketing law. Productions go back further than payroll does. Are you eligible? Yes, yeah. Beatrice has covered that one.
Terry, there was one question which was similar to the one we discussed recently. If you go to a rental venue and you're hiring the people who work at that venue through the venue, they unfortunately will not be eligible. Those wages will not be eligible for reimbursement because they are employees of the venue. That is correct.
Yeah. Yeah, you can think of it very clearly. If you report it as an employee expense, then it's eligible. But when you are reporting what you pay to a venue, you report that as a rental expense. Yeah. Those are their employees, not yours, even if you pay someone, even if you're paying for it on an hourly basis.
Someone is asking about SDC directors. We can't offer you legal advice. However, the easy answer to that question is if they're not being paid as employees, you cannot get reimbursement for them.
Yes. Even if it is someone, separate from that question, there are people that you can legally still pay as independent contractors. They still aren't eligible for this.
Well, and again, not answering a legal question, but union workers legally cannot be independent contractors.
Right.
Just look it up.
Yeah. But separate from that, like, your publicists, some of those kinds of people, even if it is someone that you legitimately can pay as a 1099, they are still not eligible for this. This is exclusively employees.
Here's a more complicated one that I think we need to do some research on. If an AEA actor asks to be paid through their corporation, are they an employee? They're not technically your employee. We need to look this up. I think this needs further review. And we'll get back to you.
Yeah, that is definitely one. You guys are the lucky recipients of the very first webinar, and I congratulate you on coming up with at least one question where we had to let's go back to the drawing table and get higher ups. The thing to remember on this is we are managing the program. Cal OSBA is housed within GoBiz, and so Cal OSBA is administering the program, but there are overlords above all of us that sometimes get to make the final decision. One of the things that we have all learned in our advocacy efforts is legislation is great, and at the end of the day, there's what you think it means, and then nobody knows what it really means until the lawyers step in. So we'll get a clarification on that. Another thing that I don't know has been brought up today, but is a question that I got in an email that I want to go ahead and cover. There is a lot of conversation in the world right now about DEI statements. None of that conversation and potential impact of having DEI statements at this point is impacting this process. The legislation specifically says you need to have one in place, and we are following the legislation at this point. If something changes and it somehow becomes illegal to have a DEI statement or something, then that may change. But at this point, that is in fact not what has happened, even in the country as a whole. It is still legal to have your own, but none of that at this point is changing the legislation. You should assume that requirement will stay intact. If that changes, we'll let people know.
I think there's some confusion. There's people asking, well, we're an organization that's moving from volunteers to employees. Are we eligible? You're eligible if you meet those eligibility requirements. You're a 501c3. You've been producing, for the public for at least 3 years. You won't get reimbursed for anything that you did with volunteers, though. You will get reimbursed for any monies that you pay people as employees. And so they're different questions. So yes, you might still be eligible if you meet those other criteria. And what you submit, if you don't have any employees in Q3 and Q4, then you will not be able to submit for those quarters. You can submit for Q1 and Q2 of 2025 when you do have employee expenses.
Okay. For some reason now, I can't post to the general chat. I just posted into, the chat has gone insane today. Or everyone's just sick of hearing from me, and the Zoom gods are saying, enough from you, brah. But at any rate, I have just posted into the chat the link where you can go in and start to set up your portal, your account. Separate from that, follow that link to the tech tips, and it will help you and show you. And love to you as well, Kim Maxwell. I miss you, sweetie. All right. Are there any other burning questions? Do you feel like there's any? We've got 18 whole minutes, kids. So the link, okay, I promise you, everyone, if the link is not showing up in the chat for some reason, Martha, you're sending that to host.
Yeah, everybody's asking for the links, all the links for the guidelines.
I've also lost it. So
I tell you what, somebody put a question in the chat. Can you give us the link? And somebody put a question in the chat. You're going to get all of this, but I know that you want it today, and I totally understand that. So put a question in the chat, because we can all post to the chat. We can overcome these. Megan, we are desperately trying. Yes, you will get the slides. There will be a follow-up email. And before our next webinar, we will conquer the demons that have taken over the chat function of our Zoom. Just to review what you will get afterwards, a follow-up email will come. There will be a recording of the webinar, maybe with some of the technical glitches edited out. I don't know. You will get a link to the program guidelines. It will either come out today or first thing tomorrow, Terry. It all depends on how the schedule demons get us. But we will try to get it out by the end of the day today.
If y'all go to the Q&A and you look at the last question that was asked about the AEA actor being asked to be paid through their corporation, there's another answer to that question, which is in fact the login, the address for the application portal. So if you're desperate to get it before our email comes out after this webinar, you can grab it there.
Can you go ahead and, well, I will tell you two things. One, if you go to the Californians for the Arts website, you can get the link to the guidelines. So you can go there right now. So wait, there's one new message. Let's see if it's something fun. Oh, just a thank you from Megan. Just a couple housekeeping things. Like many other service organizations, Californians for the Arts functions based on our membership. So the links are there for both Californians for the Arts California Arts Advocates, we are in our membership drive right now. So the people of field engagement would beat on me heavily if I didn't remind you that you are what make us possible. So we hope that you will consider being members and registering for the newsletter so you find out about all of the wonderful things coming up, like the opening date. Next slide. The other pitch that I must make is our upcoming California Arts and Culture Summit and Arts Advocacy Day. If you don't know about these events, there's more information there. Registration is open right now. It's a 2-day event. Tuesday is the summit. It's a paid conference. We have artists and administrators and advocates that come from all around the state and have a great, wonderful day of knowledge and networking. And the next day, we, as a band of a couple of hundred, usually, arts advocates, descend on Sacramento for legislative meetings. We have wonderful pictures of the last couple of years when part of the descent was fighting for this program and the funds for it. So if you're available either of those days, come and join us. You can come just for the free day, but the impact of being there, and CFTA sets up legislative meetings, so you can go to meet your specific legislators, and it's a great event. So next, do we have another slide? No, we're back just to pretty pictures. So you're going to get an email with all of the links, with the slide deck, with the full program guideline. I did not want to go through all 80 pages, but I'm going to tell you, it's like old school when your teacher gave you a study guide. The questions are all there. Go through them. You don't have to wait for the portal to open to know what the questions are. Get it? Fill out all the questions. Read them now so you know what they are in case you need to go get your ducks in a row. Make sure that your statement of information is complete and up to date. Make sure that something hasn't happened and your status is up to date with Secretary of State. Yes, Beatrice.
I'm sorry, there seems to be some confusion about what it means to be open. It doesn't matter if you're producing 3 productions a year and you're not like physically open between productions, that's okay. You're an ongoing entity. You're filing your 990s. That's what we're talking about. Like, we're not at our theater every single day either. That's not necessary. You can have part-time and temporary employees. That's not a problem.
Two other questions that have come up along the way here that I don't think we've covered today. One common question has been, our organization has a youth program, but it's not the main. Are those people that work on the youth program eligible? Yes, they are. Once your organization is deemed to be eligible, all of your employees are then eligible. And it's not just your performance employees. Your administrative, everybody you pay, that you pay for, that you pay as an employee is eligible. Yes, Matt Tavianini. Hello, my friend from Santa Barbara. No, you don't have to. 2024 does not have to be one of your 990s because for many of us, that's not due yet. So it's filed 990s. Yes, Martha.
This is a good question. If a fiscally sponsored organization is exempt through California but is using its fiscal sponsor's EIN, who will be the authorized signer?
Regardless of any situation, your fiscal sponsor will always be the authorized signer.
Correct.
The fiscally sponsored will never be asked to provide a 990. You will provide other financial statements. In the application, it's going to ask you for specific information about the fiscal sponsor and separate information about the fiscally sponsored. And it's very clearly spelled out in each question which they're asking about. There are specific documents that have to be provided for the fiscal sponsor and specific documents for the fiscally sponsored. Just want to read the questions very carefully. And
People are
next is
asking
where-
about, sorry, the final report, the actual specifics of the final report are still being worked on.
Yes, really what it's going to be is things like number of employees, you know, and a final certification that you did what you said you would do, and that the monies you were reimbursed for was what you said it was. You know, unfortunately, in any grant program, and particularly where state funds are involved, one of the biggest concerns everyone has is, yes, to help everyone, but we also have to prove that the money is not being dispersed in any fraudulent fashion. And unfortunately, it would be lovely to say that that is undue concern, but we all have read the story, and we all remember during the relief grants the number of stories about false information and, you know, false organizations. As nonprofits, that's much harder to do because we are so much more regulated than for-profits, but we still have to do everything we possibly can to prove that all of the information is correct and accurate. And to cover the legal basis, you will in many cases be asked to provide documentation and then sign a certificate that says the documentation that I provided was true and accurate. Yes, Beatrice.
There's a question, what about payroll that has been reimbursed by another source? I'm not clear what that means. If they're talking about another state grant that's specific for, I don't know what that entails, so I can't answer that. It sounds like it's something we'd have to research, but if you can, Richard Livingston, if you can elaborate, that would be helpful.
And given the time frame and everything, Richard, if you could send us an email with the details of what you're talking about, so we can give you specific answers and be accurate. We don't want to do anything that misleads. And we also, as an organization, as Beatrice has wisely said a few times, we can't give accounting advice. We can't give legal advice. What we can do is share information with you about the program. We ultimately can't say whether you are or will be eligible or not. We can tell you based on the guidelines, yes, you know, you, in this case, you definitely wouldn't be eligible. You know, you would be ineligible. But until we see your actual document and your actual application, what we can say is we don't see any problems. You know, these are the rules. We cannot tell you ahead of time, guarantee you that you will be eligible until we have all your documentation. Then there was something else that flitted across my brain that is gone now. Is the reimbursement? No. You know, the reimbursement is for all employees, not just those directly related to production.
Right.
Did we get the link to download the program guide into a way that attendees could see it at any point? If
Well,
not,
it's in the Q&A. That's the only place it is
Okay.
right now. Yeah.
okay, not the sign up for GoSmart, but the program guidelines link. Did that get into the Q&A also?
At the very beginning in the chat, I listed the program page on California for the Arts website, and you can get it there.
Okay. The other thing you can do on that page is sign up for other webinars.
Yeah, I put those in early. If someone came late, they may not see it, but it's very easy to go to caforthearts.org and just navigate to programs and find the Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund, and everything is there.
The biggest things to take with you today. Thank you, Ken, for sharing that with everyone. Take the email address, the PAEPF at CA for the Arts email address. Take the knowledge that you want to, you know, cuddle up with a good program guide on your comfy couch and read through it. You have time now. Take the time to read the guide. You have time now to go in and learn about the GoSmart portal and set up your account. Know that we are here. We want to help. And again, the last thing I will say to take with you is tell your friends. my goal is that everyone who is potentially eligible knows about this. Can't say everybody gets a grant. I can't say, anything else, but at the very least, that we spread this news as far and wide as we possibly can to make sure everyone knows.
And I would like to piggyback on that because Cal OSBA has agreed that we can leave the portal open past the point where the grant program is full so that we can have a wait list and so that we can accurately reflect going forward how big the demand is. If we don't have people in the portal who are eligible, we cannot advocate so specifically on your behalf. So please tell everyone to apply. Yes, it's first come, first serve, but there is still enormous value in getting in the queue, in getting on the wait list, and in helping us advocate for more money.
Okay, Beatrice, what's your final note?
Oh my goodness. Yes, breathe. Breathe. This is I just want to reiterate what Terry said. We have all worked so hard. I think that what I want to say to all of you, especially those of you who are asking, is this one-time funding? Is this going to go on in the future? That is somewhat up to you, my friends. We need to continue to advocate. So please be involved with, California for the Arts, be involved with TIPSCA, be involved with all these organizations that are working hard to try to make this something that goes on. That's it.
Well said, my friend. I will say once again, I find it incredibly appropriate that the first one of these webinars was with TIPSCA. As Daniel mentioned, as we all have, TIPSCA and Equity and CA for the Art were spent the time pushing this rock up the hill. And it is only appropriate that you are where we begin this journey now for the next leg of this adventure. The other thing I will say, I don't know if any of our friends from Cal OSBA made it today, but I will tell you all, they have been great stewards. They are extremely aware that ours is a very unique industry and something different from what they're used to dealing with, both in terms of both the nonprofit nature, but also the unique nature of live performing arts. And they specifically wanted to structure the administration of this program so that they were partnering with a organization that was aware of, embedded in, and part of this community so that it was led with knowledge. And they have been responsive and supportive and have listened. And you should all know that and be grateful. Government is tough and running bureaucracies is tough. And they, like everyone else, have lots of bosses, the entire legislature. And so there are hoops, unfortunately, in this application that you have to jump through. You have to tell us what county you're from. We need to know the size of your venue. Some of these things that I'm sure you will scratch your head and say, why? But understand, everybody's just trying to do their due diligence, both those that originally wrote the legislation, what the requirements are now. No one is trying to be onerous or burdensome. Everyone is very dedicated to get these funds out the door. So on that, it is 12:29. Thank you all. And I hope to hear from and see you all soon.